Kale Vorik stood at the edge of a cold metal platform that reached far over the city of Ralzan. His yellow eyes watched the distant hills, glowing under the light of twin moons. His world was quiet now, too quiet, since the day he chose to break the laws of his kind. He was a soldier of the Zarkari, a proud warrior race, known for strict codes and old traditions. They never interfered in the wars of other species, even if those species begged for help. But 5 years ago everything changed. That was the day the humans came to the edge of Zarkari space, not in ships of war, but in broken vessels, filled with wounded civilians and scared children. Their colony had been attacked by pirate clans, who left no one alive unless they could be sold. The human ships sent a signal, weak and desperate, a voice full of fear and sorrow. It reached every ship near the border. But only one answered: Kale Vorik. He was not the strongest warrior, not the most decorated commander. He was just a scout on a long-range patrol. But when he heard that human voice, something pulled at his heart, something old and strange. Against orders, Kale rerouted his patrol ship and jumped into the dead zone, where the pirate fleet was circling the human survivors like vultures, waiting for a final kill. He remembered how his hands shook as he activated his weapons, how his crew stared at him in disbelief. "This is not our war," one of them said, but Kale simply replied, "It is now." He hit the pirates fast and hard. His ship danced between theirs, moving like a shadow. Fire lit the sky, debris spun through the black void. His crew fought without mercy, though they feared exile for breaking the code. In less than 20 minutes it was over. The pirates were gone, scattered or dead, and the human ships floated quietly in space, safe at last. Kale approached them slowly, weapons down, engines quiet. They opened a channel. A human woman with tired eyes appeared on his screen. Her voice broke as she spoke. "We owe you our lives." Kale nodded once and turned off the screen. He sent coordinates and guided them to a nearby trade station, then left without a word. He expected nothing in return. What he did not know was that the humans never forget. 5 years passed. Kale now lived on a quiet outpost on the edge of his homeworld, a small fortress built into the cliffs above the sea. He had been removed from command, not punished, but not honored either. His name was a quiet whisper, a reminder of a choice others feared to make. He did not regret it, but the galaxy had moved on, and Kale thought perhaps his story had ended there, until the sky changed. It began with a tremble in the ground, a low hum that echoed through the rocks. Birds fled the cliffs. The sea grew still. Then a shadow fell over the fortress, wide and dark. Kale looked up. Above him hung a warship unlike any he had seen before, massive, smooth, and silent, black as the void, with blue light running like rivers across its hull. Its engines made no sound, yet its presence shook the mountains. A human warship. He stepped outside slowly, his heart unsure if this was dream or warning. Then his communicator blinked. A message, simple and short. "Humanity remembers." Kale stared at the words, his fingers frozen over the screen. Then came a voice. "This is Commander Levacross of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are being hailed in honor." Kale opened the channel. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Because you stood alone to save what was not yours," she replied, "and now humanity stands with you." Kale did not speak. Leva continued, "We bring no demands, only a favor returned. We invite you aboard." Kale boarded a shuttle that came down from the massive ship. It was made of silver and black with markings of Earth and something else, a symbol unfamiliar to Kale. Inside the shuttle, he saw human soldiers, quiet and respectful. None spoke unless needed, but all gave him a slight nod, not of command but of respect. When the shuttle docked, Kale stepped into a ship that felt more alive than metal. Its walls pulsed with quiet light, its systems hummed with hidden power. Leva met him on the deck, tall and calm, her eyes steady. She wore no weapons, yet power followed her like a shadow. She guided him through the ship, explaining as they walked, "The ship is called the Horizon. It is the first of its kind, built with both human and allied knowledge, including some Zarkari tech." Kale stopped. "You built this with our science?" "No," she said, "with your example." They entered a wide room filled with displays, each showing different worlds, battles, and plans. "This is our command room," Leva said, "and you, Kale Vorik, are now invited to be part of something larger." Kale asked, "Why me?" "Because you showed us a truth we forgot," she said, "that honor is not about blood or rule, but choice. You chose to stand alone. Now you will never stand alone again." Kale looked around and saw something strange on one screen. A battle was being planned in a system near Zarkari space. A new threat was rising. The Ketheri swarm and Earth was moving before the council could even speak. "We are acting first," she said, "and we want you to be with us." Kale nodded slowly. In that moment he felt something rise within him, something not felt in years. Purpose. But far across the stars others were watching. Leaders of empires who feared Earth's growing reach. Whispers of a new alliance spread. Rumors of human warcraft moving faster than light. Of Kale Vorak standing beside Earth, of a forgotten soldier who now walked with giants. They did not yet know what this meant, but they would. Because when you earn humanity's favor, you do not just make an ally. You rewrite the rules of war. The horizon moved like a silent god across the stars, its engines leaving no trail, its shadow stretching over the frozen moons of the Kovar rim, its surface glowing with hidden power as it slipped through empty space while the universe slept. Kale Vorak stood at the window of his guest quarters, arms behind his back, eyes locked on the dark field outside. The stars drifted like snow through the black void, and below them a small planet turned slowly, its rings casting colored light across the clouds. This was not his world, not Zarkari, not Earth, but somewhere in between, neutral space, forgotten by most, but chosen by the humans for their next meeting. The door behind him slid open, and Commander Leva Cross entered, wearing the same black uniform with silver trim. Her steps calm, her voice steady as she spoke. "We have arrived early, the others will follow later." Kale turned and nodded his head slightly, a Zarkari gesture of respect, not submission. "You still have not told me what this gift is." Leva smiled, but it was not the kind of smile that brought peace. It was the kind that spoke of storms. "Come with me," she said. They walked through the wide corridors of the horizon, walls alive with shifting light, ceilings high, and silent soldiers past them without speaking, all nodding, as Kale walked by, not out of fear, but out of something deeper. He was not one of them, but he was no longer just Zarkari either. He was something else, something new. They entered a chamber unlike any Kale had seen before. It was vast and circular, the floor polished black, like still water. In the center stood a raised platform, and on it sat an object. A machine. Tall and silent, glowing with soft blue light, with long arms folded into itself. It looked both ancient and new, like it had always existed, but only just awakened. Kale stepped closer and felt a hum deep in his bones. Not sound, not touch, but something else. "What is this?" he asked. "The gift," Leva said. She stepped beside the machine and placed her hand on a panel. The machine came to life, parts moving softly, lights pulsing. "This is a command unit designed to operate in multiple environments, linked directly to the horizon and the Earth Defense Network." She paused, letting the machine finish unfolding until it stood tall like a knight in rest. "It is yours." Kale blinked. "Mine. You saved a human colony. When no one else would you risk exile for strangers. You broke the code of your people to do what was right. Earth does not forget favors. But this is more than a gift. It is a symbol, a message to those watching, that Earth chooses its friends carefully." Kale stepped forward and placed his hand on the machine. It responded instantly, recognizing him, opening a small console that lit up in Zarkari text. "How? We studied your language, your tech, your energy signatures. We combined them with our systems and added something new, something human." The machine had a name, Sentinel-1. And it was not just a weapon, it was a partner, a silent guardian capable of acting independently, fighting beside him, learning, adapting. This was not payment. It was a declaration. Kale felt something tighten in his chest, not fear, not pride, something quieter. Responsibility. Leva walked beside him, again her voice lower now. "There is more. We intercepted communications from several systems. The Ketheri swarm is spreading faster than expected. Colonies are falling, trade routes are breaking, and the council remains silent." "Of course they are," Kale said. "The swarm only threatens the weak. The council does not care until the fire reaches their walls." "Exactly. That is why Earth will not wait." Leva brought up a star map. Dozens of points lit up across the sector, red blinking dots showing Ketheri attacks, yellow lines showing movement, blue circles marking human ships. Kale studied the pattern and saw it immediately. The Ketheri were not attacking at random. They were testing, probing, planning something larger. And Earth had already guessed. We plan to strike their forward nest within 70 hours. We want you to lead the approach. Kale looked at her. Why me? Because the swarm has never fought your kind. They do not understand your tactics, your culture, your mind. They fear what they do not know, and we will give them something new to fear. Kale nodded. And the council? They will know soon enough. Kale returned to his quarters. Sentinel-1 followed behind him, silent, but aware its presence, like a shadow he could trust. He activated the wall display and called for a secure channel. The screen blinked once, then connected to a face from his past. It was General Torvek, Kale's former commander, the one who had watched him fall from grace, the one who said nothing when Kale walked away in silence. Torvek raised an eyebrow as he saw him. You live still, and now you wear human colors. I wear no colors, Kale said, only purpose. They have chosen me, and I have accepted. There was a long pause, then Torvek leaned forward. Why are you calling? To warn you. The swarm is coming. Earth moves first. If your people wish to live, they must choose a side. Torvek did not reply. The screen went dark. Kale turned away and stared again at the stars. Later that night, as ships arrived from other systems, Kale stood on the observation deck, Sentinel-1 at his side, human officers near him, watching as Allied forces docked. Small crafts from planets Earth had once fought, now arriving in peace, new flags hanging side by side with Earth's banner. Kale realized something had changed. The galaxy was shifting. Old enemies were becoming allies. New wars were coming. And through it all, humanity stood not as rulers, but as reminders of what power could be when guided by loyalty, not greed. When a favor became a bond, and a bond became unbreakable. The meeting began in a grand hall filled with voices of many species, each with their own language, their own stories. But all eyes turned when Kale stepped forward, not as a broken soldier, not as a forgotten outcast, but as a symbol of something greater, of what happens when you stand beside humanity, and they choose to stand beside you. Kale spoke few words that day, but they were heard across the stars. Let the swarm come. Let the galaxy judge us. We do not fear what is next. We prepare for it, and we fight not to conquer, but to protect those who cannot fight alone. Outside, the horizon glowed bright in the void, its shape burning against the dark. Sentinel-1 activated fully and stood beside Kale, ready for the first command. The war had not yet begun, but the rules were already changing, and those who still thought humanity played by the old ways would soon learn. This was a different kind of war, and a different kind of ally. The blackness of space hung still and cold as the horizon drifted quietly near the edge of the Vascal system, its engines low, its lights pulsing with silent energy, while thousands inside prepared for what lay ahead. Kale Vorik stood on the command bridge, his eyes focused on the massive display. Before him, dozens of red markers moved like fireflies across the screen, each one a Ketheri hive ship, each one a threat. The swarm was growing. Leva Cross moved beside him, her voice quiet, but sharp like the edge of a blade. We are close. He nodded once, knowing the danger, but ready to meet it. The Ketheri were not like other enemies. They were not greedy or power-hungry. They did not talk or trade. They spread like disease. They consumed, they multiplied, they learned. And worst of all, they adapted. The horizon had seen battle before, but this would be its first true test against the swarm. Human soldiers stood in rows across the ship, armor polished, weapons charged, eyes calm, but fierce. Every one of them knew what they were walking into, and none turned away. Kale stepped forward and raised his voice. Today we face a threat that does not think like us, that does not feel like us. It spreads like fire and devours all that stands in its path. But we are not here to burn. We are here to end the fire. Silence fell, then a single clap followed, then another. Soon the chamber echoed with the sound of hands and fists striking chest plates, not in fear, not in desperation, but in belief. They believed in the mission. They believed in each other. They believed in him. Sentinel-1 moved behind Kale, silent and tall, its systems ready, its weapons waiting, its mind linked to Kale's own through the human neural sync interface. It was not just a machine. It was a shield. And now the shield would rise. The horizon moved forward, its sister ships flanking both sides, 3 Tempest-class destroyers and 4 smaller scout frigates, each one built with speed and power, ready for deep space combat. Kale issued the command. All units prepare for drop. The human soldiers rushed into their pods, tight metal chambers, lined with glowing straps, each one a bullet, waiting to be fired across space, into the heart of the enemy. Kale entered his own pod. Sentinel-1 folded into a compact state. Beside him, the hatch closed, the lights dimmed, and the countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The pods launched. Thousands of them streaking through the void, glowing like shooting stars, heading straight for the main Ketheri hive cluster, spinning and burning as they pierced the black. Kale's pod hit the surface of the Ketheri nest, planet-hard dust, and ash bursting around it. The door burst open, and he rolled out weapon-ready boots, sinking into thick red sand. The swarm was already moving. Dark shapes crawled from the shadows, long limbs and sharp claws, clicking sounds echoing through the air. Their skin shimmered like oil, their eyes glowed with sick light. Kale fired once. 2 creatures dropped, then Sentinel-1 emerged, its form rising like a beast of steel. Its arms unfolded, its cannon hummed, and it unleashed a storm of light and fire. Human pods hit the ground all around the planet, soldiers spilling out in formation, gunfire, echoing screams, and growls mixing into a deadly chorus, the air thick with smoke and dust. Kale moved through the chaos, giving orders, directing fire, helping pull soldiers from crushed pods, pushing deeper toward the heart of the nest. They fought not like a normal army. They fought like a machine. Every step measured, every blast planned, every loss recorded in real time and adjusted by the Horizon's battle AI. The Ketheri attacked in waves, each wave bigger, each wave smarter. But humanity did not fall back. They pushed forward. Kale saw a young soldier pinned under debris, his arm broken, his weapon out of reach. Without pause, Kale lifted the metal slab and pulled him free. "Get up, soldier." The boy nodded, bleeding but alive. He raised his weapon and fired into the swarm with a scream that echoed like thunder. Deeper they went until the walls of the nest towered around them, black and pulsing with hive energy, glowing with veins of green light, where Ketheri eggs waited to hatch. Kale knew what had to be done. Leva's voice came through his comm. "The charges are set. If we take out the core, the swarm will collapse in this sector." Kale moved fast, Sentinel-1 ahead of him, clearing a path through the thickest parts of the hive, its arms slicing through flesh, its cannon ripping holes in the walls. They reached the center, a chamber filled with eggs, and one massive creature larger than anything they had faced before, the queen. She rose from the shadows, her legs like spears, her face a twisted mess of eyes and fangs. She screamed, and the walls shook. Kale raised his rifle and fired. The shot hit, but bounced off her armor. She charged, crashing into the floor, breaking stone, sending soldiers flying. Sentinel-1 jumped between her and Kale and slammed into her with full force. The 2 machines locked in a brutal clash, light and shadow colliding in a storm of metal and bone. Kale and the others set the charges around the chamber, while the queen fought. Sentinel-1 claws, scraping sparks, flying weapons, overheating systems, pushing past safe limits. Finally, the last charge was armed. Kale gave a signal, and the team fell back, dragging the wounded as the countdown began. Sentinel-1 broke from the queen and ran to Kale just as the wall collapsed behind them. They reached the extraction point just as the Horizon's beam picked them up, pulling them through the air into safety. Behind them, the nest exploded, a wave of fire and dust rising into the sky. The ground split, the hive sank into the earth, and the screams of the swarm were lost in the roar. Back aboard the Horizon, the survivors stood together, some wounded, some silent, all alive. Leva met Kale on the deck, her face calm, but her eyes burning. "You changed everything down there." Kale looked at the others. No, they did. Across the stars, news spread fast. The Ketheri swarm had lost an entire nest. The first major defeat in generations. Not by numbers, not by strength, but by something the swarm could not predict. Unity, purpose, sacrifice. Leaders from distant worlds took notice, some in fear, some in hope, because the rules of war had changed. And they all knew why. Because Kale Vorik had earned humanity's favor. And now, humanity fought with him. The stars turned slowly above the fractured world where the battle had ended. The fires of the swarm nest still burned across the cracked surface, but they burned without purpose now, without command, without future. Inside the Horizon, the lights glowed with soft blue, calmed the hum of systems, filled the halls like music, and the scent of metal and dust floated on the recycled air. Kale Vorik stood in silence before a large display. His armor scratched his hands, blackened with dirt and blood, yet his eyes clear, his breath steady. Around him officers spoke in low voices, maps flickered with updates, casualty reports flowed in real time, and across every screen one truth remained: the nest was gone. Gone because of a plan that did not follow old rules. Gone because humanity refused to wait for permission. Gone because someone had stood beside them and given them the courage to act. Leva Cross walked into the room, her steps quiet, her presence like gravity. She moved to Kale's side and nodded at the screen before them. We changed the battlefield. Kale looked at her, his voice low. No, we changed the meaning of war. Leva said nothing because she understood. This was not just a victory, it was a new way forward. Across the stars, the news traveled faster than ships, faster than light, faster than fear. Worlds that had once laughed at the idea of unity now watched in silence. Empires that stood tall in their own pride now leaned forward in curiosity. And the council, the ancient voice of order in the galaxy, fell quiet. In their halls of silver and glass, they debated in whispers, afraid to say what they all felt: that the humans had done what no council had dared. They had struck first and ended a threat before it could grow. Without approval, without waiting, without fear. Back on the horizon, Kale entered the war room again, this time not as a guest, not as an outsider, but as something else. A guide. The room was full. Commanders from other ships, allies from other races, even former enemies now stood together around the central map. They all looked to him. He did not speak of honor or glory. He spoke of survival, of movement, of purpose. He showed them how the swarm moved, not like soldiers, but like waves, seeking weak points, testing boundaries, probing for fear. He explained the value of chaos, of speed, of bold strikes in the dark. He taught them what the Zarkari knew, but had forgotten. That war is not about numbers or size, but belief. Believe in the fight, and you win before the battle begins. Leva stood beside him as each species adjusted their plans, each general rethought their tactics, each commander left with new eyes. When the room cleared, Leva turned to Kale and said, "What they fear is not our weapons." Kale nodded. "It is our will." On the training decks below, the ship soldiers practiced new drills designed by Kale and the human strategists. Mixed units formed from different species, moving as one. Drills that taught not just shooting but thinking. Drills that taught not just defense, but how to make the enemy doubt. Kale watched as a young soldier from the Varnak race struggled with a movement. His form was wrong, his steps slow. Kale walked over and placed a hand on the soldier's arm, gently guiding him, showing him how to move, where to turn, when to strike. The soldier tried again, and this time his blade moved like fire. "You learn," Kale said. "You fight well." The soldier smiled with pride. Elsewhere on the horizon, Sentinel-1 stood near a row of human engineers, its systems open, its chest glowing softly as they installed new upgrades based on battle data from the swarm nest. It now carried adaptive shielding, pulse cannons, and a backup neural node linked directly to Kale's armor. It was more than a weapon. It was a message, one that read, "We are always ready." Kale returned to his quarters and found a small box on his table. Inside was a piece of the Swarm Queen's armor, carved into a circle with human words engraved along the edge. "For the one who leads through fire." Kale held it in his hand for a long time, his mind quiet, his thoughts like stars drifting slowly. Then a chime sounded at the door. It was a message from the council, requesting his presence. Not demanding, requesting. Kale boarded a transport ship and left the horizon for the first time in weeks, flying toward the great station known as Highreach, the council's home, floating above a blue giant star. The halls of Highreach were wide and empty, polished to shine without warmth. Kale walked with Leva beside him, and Sentinel-1, just behind. Their steps echoed across the marble. Inside the great chamber, the council sat in silence, robes flowing, eyes fixed. Kale stopped before them. They did not shout. They did not accuse. One of them, an elder with silver skin and long horns, finally spoke. "You acted without order, without blessing, without unity. And yet, the swarm is broken." "Why?" Kale answered with no fear in his voice. Because I do not wait for fire to spread before I lift water. Another counselor leaned forward. And what do you offer now? Kale looked around the chamber. A new order. Not of control, but of action. Not of silence, but of motion. Not of waiting, but of protecting. The council was quiet. Then one by one each member nodded. Not in agreement, but in understanding. Kale and Leva left the chamber not as rebels, but as symbols of something greater. A force the galaxy could no longer ignore. Back aboard the Horizon, the crew stood in formation. Kale stepped onto the deck, Sentinel-1. Beside him, Leva at his flank, soldiers and officers alike raised their hands not in salute, but in unity. Kale looked out at them. This is not the end. This is the beginning. We will not wait for threats to grow. We will not ask for permission to defend the weak. We will not hold back while others fall. We are not just rewriting the battlefield. We are rewriting the stars. The room filled with voices, cheers, laughter, and something stronger. Hope. Not just for humans. Not just for Zarkari. But for all. Because Kale Vorak had proven something the galaxy had forgotten. That war does not belong to the loudest. That power does not rest with the biggest guns. That victory does not belong to those who sit and speak, but to those who act when no one else will. And those who stand beside humanity. Do not walk alone. They lead the charge. They change the game. They rewrite the rules. The Horizon floated in deep orbit above the quiet world of Dranath, its engines low, its shields relaxed, its crew busy with repairs. After the last campaign, the war room quiet except for the hum of the central display, where Kale Vorak stood, studying the shifting patterns of enemy movement, the swarm retreating in scattered pieces, their hive network fractured, yet still alive, in distant corners of the galaxy. Leva Cross entered the room with a data pad, her steps quick, her eyes narrowed. She moved to Kale's side and placed the pad on the table. The screen showed intercepted transmissions, coded in the language of the Vec Dominion. Kale's jaw tightened. The Vec had remained silent during the conflict, neither ally nor enemy, their worlds far from a swarm's path. Yet here, they were whispering in shadow and sending ships into sectors where they had no reason to be. They are not moving for trade, Leva said. No, Kale replied, they are moving for position. Leva tapped the displays, zooming in on a single transmission, sent from High-Reach Station to a Vec outpost. The words were simple but heavy. Target confirmed, eliminate quickly. Kale's mind sharpened. This was no random threat, this was deliberate, and it was aimed at him. Hours later, the Horizon passed through the dark side of Dranath, where the planetary shadow covered them. From long-range scans, Kale moved to the training decks to find Sentinel-1 undergoing final diagnostics, its new shielding complete, its weapon ports polished like mirrors, ready for war even if the battle was not against the swarm. We may need you sooner than planned, Kale said to the machine, though it gave no answer, only the soft hum of its core acknowledging his presence. That night, Kale stood alone on the observation deck, staring into the vast black. A faint light moved far off, too far for the human eye, but not for his enhanced vision. A ship, without transponder codes, sliding through the system, like a knife through water. He called the bridge immediately and ordered quiet tracking, no signals, no active scans. If this was the Vec, it would be better to let them think the Horizon was unaware. But Kale knew. The enemy was already inside the system. At dawn, the attack came silent, at first a shadow on the radar, then a sudden surge as the Vec strike craft dropped their cloaks and dived toward the Horizon. Plasma fire streaked through the void, the shields flared bright, the deck shuddered under impact, alarms sang through every hull. Leva was already on the bridge, barking orders, guns to full, tracking their patterns. Counterstrike on my mark. Kale rushed to the nearest armory, pulling on his battle gear, locking the neural link. With Sentinel-1, the connection lit his senses. With raw clarity, the machine's awareness, blending with his own, they became one thought, one movement, one purpose. The first boarding craft slammed into the Horizon's hull, breaching corridors. With explosive charges, Vec soldiers in black armor poured inside, moving fast and silent, cutting down crew. As they advanced, Kale met them at the junction near the war room, his rifle steady, his movements precise. Sentinel-1 crashed into their flank, scattering them like sand before the tide. The fighting was brutal close, and fast Kale moved through the smoke, pulling injured crew to safety, firing only when certain of the kill, his mind running cold calculations, each step measured, each breath a choice between life and death. The Vec pressed hard toward the command core, their leader a tall figure in crimson plating cutting a path, with twin blades, his eyes fixed on Kale, with the hunger of a predator. Kale knew this was no random assassin, this was a champion sent to ensure the kill was personal. They met in the narrow hall, the clash of metal echoing sharp in the confined space. Kale parried once, twice, then countered with a strike that sent the Vec stumbling. Sentinel one stepped forward, but Kale raised a hand, stopping it. This was his fight. The Vec lunged. Kale sidestepped and drove his shoulder into the attacker, slamming him against the wall. The blades flashed again. Kale caught one arm twisted and drove the weapon into the other, sending the crimson figure to his knees. Why? Kale demanded. The Vec spat blood and answered, not for war, not for politics, for fear. You and your humans change too much. You make the old powers small. Kale's eyes narrowed. Then, without another word, he ended it, the body falling still on the metal floor. By the time the last of the Vec were pushed back into the void, the Horizon's decks were slick with oil and blood, smoke curling from broken panels, the hum of damaged systems filling the silence left after the guns stopped. Leva approached Kale, her armor scorched, her voice rough. They wanted to make an example of you. Kale shook his head. No, they wanted to make an example of humanity through me. She nodded slowly, then looked out at the drifting wrecks of the Vec craft. What do we do now? Kale turned toward Sentinel one, its frame dark but unbroken. We send a message. The Horizon's comms burned across the Vec channels, one short transmission, carrying only 2 words. Last warning. After that, the Vec sector fell silent. Their patrols, withdrawn, their spies, vanished. No one knew what happened to the command center that had ordered the attack. Some whispered it had been erased in the night. Others believed the humans had done worse. Whatever the truth, fear now walked in the shadows of the Vec Dominion. Kale stood once more on the observation deck, Sentinel one, beside him, the stars bright and endless, the galaxy still full of enemies, still full of threats. But tonight those threats were quiet, and in that quiet Kale understood. When you stand with humanity, you are not safe, you are not untouchable, you are not spared from danger. But you are never alone. And those who strike at you learn a lesson that spreads faster than any fleet. You do not break a bond with humanity. You break yourself. The Horizon drifted beyond the rim of known space, far past the last charted system, its hull patched from the Vec attack, but its crew restless. The silence of deep space weighing heavy on them. Kale Vorik stood in the war room, again eyes fixed on the tactical display, though nothing moved on it except the slow pulse of the Horizon's own beacon. He was waiting for something, though he could not yet name it. Leva Cross entered carrying a slim data crystal. She placed it into the console. Without a word, the display lit, with a wave pattern too regular to be natural, too precise to be noise. It was a signal, faint and far, but deliberate. Kale leaned closer, adjusting the filters. The pattern repeated in groups of 3, then shifted into a long, steady tone, followed by silence. It was not swarm, not Vec, not any code in the archives. It was something new. Where did you find this? Kale asked. Leva answered. It came from beyond the veil, a dead sector, with no recorded life, no active stars, and no reason for anyone to be there. Kale's instincts sharpened. The veil was more than just a dead sector. It was a graveyard of ships, swallowed by strange currents of energy. No one who entered without a guide ever came back. The swarm avoided it. The Vec ignored it. Even human fleets marked it as no-go territory. And yet here was a signal. Kale ordered a course plotted immediately. Engines low, stealth engaged. The Horizon slid forward into the cold dark, the light of distant stars, fading until only the ship's own glow remained. Hours passed. The crew tensed, the hull creaking under shifts of unseen pressure. The closer they came to the source, the stranger the readings became. Gravity pulling in uneven waves, sensors blurring as though the ship itself was being rewritten 1 fraction of a second at a time. Then they saw it, a massive structure half buried in the drift, its surface black, like frozen shadow towers, rising from its sides, like broken spears. The signal came from deep within its heart. Kale ordered a scan, but the sensors failed each time, returning only static. He made the call himself, preparing an away team, Sentinel 1 joining. Without hesitation, the machine's presence, a wall of silent strength. They descended in the shuttle, the structure looming larger, until it filled every view panel, its surface etched with symbols. No one could read the airless corridors inside swallowed their lights, the only sound the faint hum of their suits. Leva moved ahead, sweeping her scanner, until the signal burst loud and clear, nearly deafening. In their comms, the source was close, a sealed chamber with a circular door marked by a single glowing point of light. Kale placed his hand on it. The door shifted open without a sound and revealed a vast room lined with crystalline pillars, each one humming with a faint pulse. Like a heartbeat, at the center stood a figure, not alive, not dead, its body made of metal and bone, its eyes closed, its frame suspended by streams of energy flowing from the crystals into its chest. Kale stepped closer, his voice low. "Who are you?" The figure's eyes opened, light pouring from them. The voice that answered was both inside Kale's mind and in the room around them. "I am the keeper of the first gate." The words struck deep, though Kale could not explain why the keeper spoke again. "I watched when your kind lit its first fire. I watched when you broke your first chain. I watched when you left your world and stepped into the dark, and I waited for the day you would come here." Kale asked, "Why wait?" "Because the swarm is not your greatest threat," the keeper replied. "There are older hungers, older wars. The swarm runs from them, the Vec fear them, and if you do not prepare, you will be undone before you even know they have come." Kale's mind churned. The keeper raised one hand, and a shard of crystal floated toward him, pulsing with the same rhythm as the pillars. "Take this," the keeper said. "It will show you where the first gate will open, and when it does you must decide whether to hold it closed or to open it wide." Before Kale could question further, the pillars flashed bright. The streams of energy cut off the keeper's form, turning to dust that scattered into the air. The signal died, the silence pressing in again. They returned to the horizon, the crystal secured in containment, its pulses now matching the beat of the horizon's engines. Kale stood in the war room, staring at the object, feeling its weight beyond its size. Leva approached quietly. "Whatever that was," she said, "it just changed everything." Kale nodded, not looking away from the crystal. And not for the better. That night in his quarters, Kale could not sleep. The crystal's glow seemed to seep through walls into his thoughts. When he closed his eyes, he saw flashes, not dreams, but visions of black sky filled with shapes so vast they blotted out the stars. Their eyes, like burning moons, their movements slow and certain. The sight left him cold. In the morning, he ordered the horizon to change course. They would not return to human space. Not yet. The risk of leading something back was too great. Instead, they would follow the crystal's pulse and see where it led. Days passed, the crew uneasy. The further they went, the stranger the space became. Stars bending in odd ways, shadows moving where no light touched. Once they passed a field of drifting wrecks, none older than a year, all from fleets no one had reported missing. Kale knew now that the keeper had not been warning them about a war that was coming. The war was already here. And somewhere out there the first gate waited. The horizon sailed into a region where space felt thinner than air, where light seemed slower, and sound seemed almost alive. The crystal in the war room pulsed faster, now each beat like a drum, calling them forward. Kale Vorik stood with Leva Cross and Sentinel-1 as the stars outside bent into long ribbons, the crew silent, knowing they were heading into something no one had faced before. Suddenly the crystal flared so bright that every console dimmed, the engines staggered. Then the void ahead of them rippled, opening into a wound of swirling light and shadow. Within it something vast stirred, its outline too large to measure, its edges fading into the distance, its presence pressing against every mind aboard the horizon. Kale felt his knees weaken, though he held himself upright. Leva's voice was a whisper. "We found the first gate." Sentinel-1 stepped forward, scanning the anomaly, its tone calm, but the reading impossible. The thing inside was not a ship, not a planet, not a swarm, but something alive, something patient, something waiting. Then the signal returned, not as a faint pattern, but as a roar filling the ship, every surface vibrating, the voice of the keeper echoing through the halls, though they had seen him die. "The choice is yours," keeper said. "Hold it closed or open it wide, but know this choice will not come again." Kale looked at Leva, her face pale, but eyes steady. He turned to the crew over comms, speaking to every soul on the ship. "This is not our fight, but it will be if we walk away, because what waits behind that gate will not stay there forever." The crew did not answer with fear, but with readiness, weapons primed, shields at full, engines steady. Kale ordered the horizon forward, the ship moving toward the edge of the gate, as the thing beyond shifted its gaze upon them. It was like being seen by the universe itself. Kale felt memories, not his own, rush through his mind. Oceans of black water, burning skies, cities, rising then falling over and over, until there was only silence. The thing beyond the gate was older than stars, and had watched them all be born and die. The crystal began to crack, lines of light spreading across its surface. Leva shouted, "Energy surge building, it is going to trigger something." Kale realized what the keeper had meant. The crystal was a key, and they had brought it here. Now the gate was responding, opening wider, the pressure pulling at the horizon as though inviting them inside. Kale made his choice. He ordered all power to weapons and shields, targeting the crystal with the main cannon. The crew obeyed. Without hesitation, the shot struck the crystal, shattering it into fragments of burning light that scattered into the void. The gate shuddered its swirl, slowing the thing beyond, letting out a sound that was not sound but the breaking of thought itself. Kale ordered the horizon to reverse engines, full thrust the ship, straining against the pull as the gate began to collapse, the ribbons of light snapping back into darkness. For a moment Kale thought they would not make it, the hull groaning under invisible hands, trying to drag them, and then, with a final burst of power, the horizon broke free, the gate folding into a single point before vanishing into nothing. Silence filled the ship, no alarms, no voices, only the quiet hum of life support. Kale looked at the empty space, where the gate had been, wondering if they had saved something or only delayed it. Leva leaned against the console, breathing hard, her voice low. "We closed it, but what if it opened somewhere else?" Kale answered, "Then we follow it and close it again." The crew slowly returned to their stations, the horizon turning away from the veil, heading back toward human space. Sentinel-1, standing silent as always, but Kale thought he saw a faint light in the machine's eyes, a sign of thought, or maybe understanding. They passed through the outer edges of the veil, the strange distortions fading, the stars returning to their normal places. But Kale knew they were not truly safe. The keeper had spoken of older hungers, and this had only been the first glimpse. Days later, as they crossed into charted territory, a faint signal appeared on long-range scans, not swarm, not Vec, but something else, a single tone repeating in groups of 3, just like the first signal. Leva turned to Kale, waiting for his order. Kale took a long breath, then gave it, set a course. The horizon turned once more, leaving safety behind, chasing the unknown, not because they wanted to, but because humanity had been shown the edge of the dark, and someone had to stand there holding the line. In the black between stars, the ship moved on, small against the endless void, but carrying with it the weight of what they had seen, the knowledge that some doors should never be opened, and the certainty that one day they would have to face what lay behind them again. Until that day, the horizon would keep watch,